On This Week in Enterprise Tech, we have Mr. Brian Chee, Mr. Curtis Franken back on the show today. Now, this might be the year for AI. That's why we go deep and talk about Chat GPT and just how disruptive it might be. Plus, we have a great guest, Becky Trevino. She's Executive Vice President of Product Management at Snow Software. Talk about enabling CIOs and IT pros alike to have complete visibility out of their software and hardware and even hybrid environments. If you want to save this year, your organization might just get the visibility it needs. You definitely shouldn't miss it. TWiT on the set.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is TWiT.
This is TWiT, This Week in Enterprise Tech, episode 526, recorded January 13th, 2023. Snowstorm of Data. This episode of This Week in Enterprise Tech is brought to you by ACI Learning. Respected companies and government agencies around the globe turn to ACI Learning year after year to help maintain their competitive edge. Supporting organizations across audit, IT, and cybersecurity readiness, ACI Learning keeps your team at the top of its game. Visit acilearning.com to learn more. And by ZipRecruiter. Your company has goals this year. Find the right people to help you achieve them with ZipRecruiter, where 4 out of 5 employers get a quality candidate within the first day. Try it free at ziprecruiter.com/TWiT. Welcome to TWiT, This Week in Enterprise Tech, the show that is dedicated to you, the enterprise professional, the IT pro, and that geek who just wants to know how this world's connected. I'm your host, Louis Maresca, your guide to the big world of the enterprise. And boy, do we have a packed full show today, but I can't guide you by myself. I need to bring in the professionals, the experts in their field, starting with the very own Mr. Brian Chee. He's net architect at Sky Fiber. He's a board member. He's a network expert. He's an all-around tech geek. Cheebert, it's always great to have you on the show. What's been keeping you busy this week?
Hey, man, I've actually been eating the learning curve on Windows 11. I bought a real inexpensive little machine and discovered very quickly that I used to buy Chrome boxes because they're inexpensive. And now all of a sudden, Chrome boxes have gotten insanely expensive. And the Windows 11 machine was under half price of what the Chrome box was charging. So that might become my new kiosk machine. We'll see.
Now, what's the power of that machine? Is it like a kind of like a ARM machine, or is it like low power?
It's a reasonably low power machine.
Okay.
It got bought because it was cheap. It was under $200.
Wow.
And that included the Windows 11 license. So I'm not complaining. I just wanted something so I could eat the learning curve and get used to it. It eventually is going to get bolted onto the Visa mount on the back of a monitor and become the machine to drive my 3D printers.
Fantastic. We'll have to hear how that goes. Thank you, Chee. We're good to see you. Well, we also have to bring in the man who has the pulse of the enterprise world. He's Mr. Curtis Franken, and he's senior analyst at Omdia. Curtis, so it's great to have you on. Now, you've been neck deep in research, haven't you?
Yeah, the research continues. We're looking at all kinds of things. I'm finishing up finally my research on cybersecurity awareness training, and then I'm going to be going into some risk quantification and also looking at a couple of things. One is the issue of AI in technology, especially in security. Just published something on that for Omdia subscribers this week. And I'm also going to be looking at friction. In other words, when you apply security, how much does it cost you in terms of making things more difficult for your users? So lots of interesting stuff going on. Can't wait to dig deeply into it.
Sounds good. Well, speaking about digging deeply, we have to dig deeply into this week's enterprise news. Now, AI is gaining some serious momentum. In fact, it's impacting all aspects of the industry. Well, OpenAI has had a couple of disruptive technologies, including the most recent arrival of Chat GPT. We're going to get into what that is and how it might just impact the entire world. Now, today we're going to talk just how you can have visibility into your software, your SaaS offerings, your hardware, and even your cloud. Today we have Becky Trevino. She's an executive vice president over at Snow Software, and we're going to talk about enabling those CIOs and those IT teams to have complete visibility of software and hardware, your infra, even your apps, regardless of whether it's on-prem, the cloud, or even in hybrid environments. So definitely stick around. Lots to talk about there. But first, like we always do, let's go ahead and jump into this week's Enterprise News Blips. Have you ever wondered about some of those pitches that are going on in Shark Tank, even those incubators or even those shows at TechCrunch where they claim they have, a ton of users on their service, right? They already have a ton of users. I tend to wonder where they come from. Don't you? Well, turns out from this entrepreneur article, they may have been actually fabricated sometime. That's right. JPM Morgan Chase filed suit against Charlie Javis, the 30-year-old founder of fintech startup Frank, which the bank purchased for $175 million. Now, JPM charges are saying that Javis misled it regarding Frank's value by faking a massive list of customers to convince JPM it was a worthwhile purchase. Big no. JPM filed the suit in Delaware, naming Javis a fellow Frank exec, Oliver Amar. Now, court documents depict an alleged deception that began in 2021, where Javis approached the bank about an acquisition, now claiming that Frank had about 4.2 million users. That's a lot of users. The company had just under 300,000 users at that time. Big deception there. And of course, Javis is fighting back, actually, because of being fired due to the whole ordeal with the separate suit. To me, this is like a method to project the possibility of being innocent. So that kind of countersuit. The suit notes that JPM requests that Javis prove Frank had the number of subscribers claimed. However, Javis first refused, citing privacy concerns, then invented not only the names of fake customers, but also added addresses, dates of birth, and other personal information for 4.265 million students who did not actually exist. JPM only found out something was wrong when they actually launched a massive email campaign to those email addresses and found that 70% of them were undeliverable. Yikes. Now, I'm surprised by just more than a couple things, but I'm going to talk about just a couple things. Now, the first one being that JPM didn't investigate this user base earlier before the acquisition. It's very weird that they didn't do this. I'm curious to hear more about that. But number two is that Javis even thought that she was get away with this whole scheme. There's no way that they would ever get away with something like that. And, going through that whole ordeal is really interesting. I guess it goes to show you bots or fake accounts alike will always blow even the best and worst of services.
Well, you know what it's like. You try something new, find some success, get all excited, and then spend all your time on that bright, happy new pursuit. But before you know it, the shine is worn off, and you're looking for something more exciting to replace what has now become routine and boring. Well, that seems to be what's happening with a key group of malicious actors who have left their traditional direct attacks on the enterprise to focus on fundamental enterprise services. Identity services like Okta and Lastpass, developer-focused services such as Slack and GitHub, and now development pipeline service provider CircleCI have suffered very public, rather successful attacks that have struck at the heart of the enterprise application supply chain. In an article published on Dark Reading, Lori McVitie, a distinguished engineer and evangelist who also happens to be a former colleague of mine, says that the glut of attacks on core enterprise tools highlights the fact that companies should expect these types of providers to become regular targets in the future. Now, lately, attackers have been focusing on two major categories of services: identity and access management systems are one, developer and application infrastructures are another. Each of these services underpin critical aspects of enterprise infrastructure. Developer services and tools have become another frequently attacked enterprise service. For example, in September, a threat actor gained access to the Slack channel for the developers at Rockstar Games, where they downloaded videos, screenshots, and code from the upcoming Grand Theft Auto 6 game. Why are attackers suddenly focusing on these services? Generally, it's because identity and developer services give access to a wide variety of corporate access, from application services to operations to source code, and compromising those services can be a skeleton key allowing access to the rest of the enterprise. Now, no one is suggesting that companies suddenly stop using these services, but it's time to make sure that they're being used safely. Experts recommend a zero trust approach to the identity and DevOps infrastructures and suggest that a fast method for rotating secrets, things like cryptographic keys, held in cloud-based repositories could turn out to be a true bargain when the inevitable breach takes place.
Well, this is something travelers might cringe at. And this is from our friends at Ars Technica. Apparently, about 1,000 planes have altimeters listening to signals in the wrong frequencies. The Federal Aviation Administration will give airlines another year to fix or replace airplane altimeters, that's radio altimeters, that can't filter out cellular transmissions from outside their allotted frequencies. Now, be careful. Allotted frequencies. In a notice of proposed rulemaking released yesterday, the FAA proposed a deadline of February 1st, 2024 to replace or retrofit faulty altimeters which are used by airplanes to measure altitude. Out of 7,993 airplanes in the U.S. registry, the FAA says it estimated that approximately 180 airplanes would require radio altimeter replacement and 820 airplanes would require the addition of radio altimeter filters to comply with the proposed modification requirement. The total estimated cost of compliance is $26 million. The requirement could finally end a dispute between the aviation and wireless industries, which has prevented AT&T and Verizon from fully deploying 5G on the C-band spectrum licenses the wireless carriers purchased for a combined $69 billion. That's billion with a B. Airplane altimeters rely on a spectrum from 4.2 gigahertz to 4.4 gigahertz, but some can't filter out 5G transmissions from the carrier spectrum in the 3.7 to 3.98 gigahertz range. In a quote from the FAA, it says some radio altimeters may already demonstrate tolerance to the 5G C-band emissions without modifications. Some may need to install filters between the radio altimeter and antenna to increase a radio altimeter's tolerance. For others, the addition of a filter will not be sufficient to address interference susceptibility. Therefore, the radio altimeter will need to be replaced with an upgraded radio altimeter. Now, the bottom line is, the big complaint is against terrestrial towers. But really, people, you turn off your phones when you're on the plane. Come on. We've been doing this for decades now. And with more 5G phones coming out, that means you're going to be putting out signals that are closer to that radio altimeter. Please turn off your phones when you fly.
Speaking of the FAA and planes, this past Wednesday, if you were traveling, I'm pretty sure you probably didn't make it too far. There was an outage in the Notice to Air Mission System known as Notam, which warns pilots in advance to potential hazards like weather and runway closures. According to this Forbes article, the 30-year-old system was not responsive and it looks to be due to a damaged and corrupt database file. Now, there's an investigation in what caused the corruption. And at this point, they aren't sure whether it's due to human error or malice. Now, still looking into it. Now, what has been uncovered as part of the investigation was that at least one of 8 contractors have had access to the system and data and could have corrupted the file. Now, the resulting impact was that travel in the U.S. pretty much came to a halt, over 10,578 flight delays and about 1,353 cancellations. Now, coincidentally, on the same day, Canada's Notam system also had some disruptions and interruptions as well, but it will stay exactly that, a coincidence. Now, we all know even some of the most advanced systems and services in the world are subject to disruption due to mistakes. Now, we've seen some of them in recent years that have taken down places like Amazon, AWS, and many other services that are out there. We've seen it. Imagine a system that's been around for, 30 years, like Notam. It can be fragile in a lot of different aspects. Now, it's unfortunate that they weren't able to restore the database fast enough to impact flights and not cause groundings. Now, according to the FAA, they've actually earmarked some of their $23.6 billion in funding this year to help modernize this particular system. Now, I guess if a single corrupt file can take down a critical system, flight system like this, the system, may need to be upgraded and hardened just a bit. Well, folks, that does it for the blips. Next up, we have a great discussion. We're going to talk about Chat GPT. But before we get to that, we do have to thank a really great sponsor of This Week in Enterprise Tech, and that's ACI Learning. Now, if you love IT and you're an IT professional, it's a given you will love ACI Learning. They have a lot to offer you. ACI Learning has fully customizable training for your team in formats for all types of learners across audit, cybersecurity, and IT. From entry-level training to putting people on the moon, ACI Learning has got you covered. According to the Robert Half, 60% of tech managers plan to expand their teams in 2023, and 88% said it's challenging to find skilled workers to fill the available roles. Now, take advantage of these opportunities and let ACI Learning help you get your IT and tech career started. And with ACI Learning, gaining these certificates and certifications and increasing your salary has never been easy. Now, the most sought after jobs, tech jobs that is, for 2023 are, hear this, cloud engineer, database developer, DevOps engineer. These sound familiar, don't they? Front-end developer, help desk tier 2 and 3, network administrator, network security engineer, software developer, software engineer, and systems security manager. Now, the average salary for an entry-level network administrator is $75,000. Think about that. Now, ACI Learning's Network Support Specialist program provides the training needed to pursue or advance your career in networking, preparing you to take the CCNA certification exam and CompTIA security and network certification exams. Now, ultimately, the big difference in salary comes down to specialization. We all know this. The most popular certifications offered by ACI Learning include CCNA and CompTIA A+. Other in-demand tech skills and certifications also offered are technical support specialist, computer user support specialist, information security analyst, and more. Certifications show more than proving a skill set. They signal to employers that you as a professional are committed to keeping your skills up to date. Now, ACI Learning offers fully customizable training for all types of learners, whether you're preferring in-person, on-demand, or remote. Take your learning beyond the classroom and be prepared for your IT career. And it doesn't have to end with IT. Explore ACI Learning offers with IT Pro, Audit Pro, including enterprise solutions, webinars, and the Skeptical Auditor podcast, practice labs, learning hubs, and their partnership program. ACI Learning supports organizations across audit, IT, and cybersecurity readiness. Maintain your company's competitive edge with ACI Learning and visit acilearning.com. That's acilearning.com. And we thank ACI Learning for their support of This Week in Enterprise Tech. OpenAI's technology is at the heart of some of the trends and interests in the so-called generative AI, what we call the whole term encompassing the algorithm that can generate text, images, or other data. Now, we're going to talk a little bit about something you may have heard of just recently. Now, in December, OpenAI brought their technology downstream to consumers to help highlight the power of their latest work that they wanted to debut called Chat GPT. Probably heard of it. What is exactly Chat GPT? We're going to get into a really good conversation about it, but I wanted to just get into just the baseline of it. Now, it's short for Generative Pre-trained Transformer. Pretty clear to you now? Well, this is an AI model that uses deep learning to generate human-like text created by OpenAI. Now, the name itself requires some unpacking. Let's talk about what that means. Generative actually refers to the ability to generate text. Pre-training means it uses a model from one machine learning task to train another, similar how we as humans draw our existing knowledge out when we learn new things. In this case, GPT involves pre-training on a much large amount of text that's out there. And Transformer is a kind of neural network that actually historically learns about relationships between all parts of data sequences. And it's seen as a breakthrough, really a breakthrough actually, because it understands context and nuances better than previous approaches. Now, all of this is powered by GPT-3. It's a text generation algorithm that was developed by OpenAI, and it has actually fed massive amounts of quantities of text data and in fact research from the web and other sources then given additional training on actually how to answer questions. It's pretty magical. The underlying check technology is the same that powers other chat engines like Chat Sonic, which is actually making an interesting version of Chat GPT itself. Chat GPT doesn't use the internet to locate answers like some of those other assistants that shall remain nameless. So that the ones that give you recipes and definitions of weather, this is a little different than that. Instead, it constructs a sentence word by word, selecting the most likely token that should come next based on its training. Now, ChatGPT was trained on the collective writings of humans across the world, past and present. And this means it actually could contain some of the same biases that exist in that data as well. It also appears in the modeling as well. Now, even before ChatGPT went viral, there was GPT-3 Playground. It was actually something that was a platform that was public way before. Unfortunately, the tool didn't create as much buzz because this is more consumer-based. Now, there are other implementations of this. In fact, you.com, which is a search engine that was bootstrapped by two Salesforce engineers, is actually powered by GPT-3 as well, and is a train-based chatbot. And they also have UWrite, was actually exists earlier than that, which is a GPT-3 text generator for writing emails and other documents. Now, I want to bring my co-host back in, but before we get to that, the interesting thing about this is the fact that this particular service will weed through all the data that's out there, and it'll find statistical patterns in text rather than connecting words to meaning. So if I ask it for how do I do a recipe, it's going to go connect that to a particular recipe on the internet and give me facts. But in the case of ChatGPT, it's going to do more than that. It's going to explain some things to you. It's going to explain facts and figures that it finds. It's going to explain text and it's going to give you some research on how to do those things right. However, some of those things you might find interesting because some of them might actually seem fabricated, facts and figures, because it might actually misunderstand your question. It might exhibit bias because of some of the training data. So there's some improvements that need to be done out there. Now, the interesting thing here is the GPT-3 uses about 175 billion data points. And the thing about that is it's a massive factor difference from its previous predecessor, GPT-2, which only used 1.5 billion. Now, I want to bring my co-host in here because the tech industry is really excited about this, but a lot of the consumers out there, people out there, are really kind of shadowed. It's shadowed by the parlor tricks that it can do, but some people are actually saying that this is going to really disrupt the market. What do you guys think, Curtis, Brian? You guys have anything to say about that?
Well, I've got a couple of things to say. First of all, it depends on which market you're talking about. I think there are some markets that this is beginning to have an impact on. Some are fairly predictable. We know that there are students who are trying to use Chat GPT to write their research papers. I find it amusing that there are also AI-based systems that try to detect AI-generated papers. So you've got this battle going on. So we've got that. A little higher up that particular food chain, we know from an article that was recently in Nature that when they submitted about 100 AI or Chat GPT generated summaries for hypothetical academic papers, human reviewers only picked up about 60% of these as being AI generated. So we've got that aspect of it. We also have the knowledge that there are news organizations, I'm going to do bunny air quotes, news organizations out there that are doing articles based on AI generated text. So you do have some markets that are in the process of being disrupted. I think the real question is the extent to which two things happen. One is that people recognize that they are dealing with an AI generated text stream based on the text stream. In other words, can they look at it and in the same way that if you listen to one of the AI generated narrations on a video that you find on a social media site, you know that it's generated because of the lack of inflection and things like that. And how many companies will tell those who are listening that what they're listening to was generated by an AI? It's that second one that I think is a more interesting question, and the one that I'd like to come back to after we hear Brian and what I'm sure is going to be his very powerful opinion on this.
Right.
Well, actually, I'm going to set the Wayback Machine just because I love to do that and say approximately 5 years ago or thereabouts, Curtis made a prediction in one of our end of the year shows. And his prediction was basically that the predominant human computer interface of the future was going to be voice. We all basically agreed with him. But one of the things in the back of my mind was, where are the stepping stones? We're not going to immediately jump into, a computer that can talk to us and hold meaningful conversations. One of the stepping stones needs to be something like what Chat GPT is providing, the ability to build multiple, more complex answers and conversations to query the person talking to it on how to asking for clarification. So a lot of the examples were saying like, could you tell us about Christopher Columbus arriving in America in 2015? Well, that's a nonsensical statement. It can't possibly be true because Christopher Columbus didn't arrive in 2015. But the Chat GPT example said, well, he didn't arrive in 2015. Maybe you want something along this line, or maybe it's someone else named Christopher Columbus. These are the pieces that I think are really missing from the human computer voice interfaces. So if anyone's used something like, the Amazon or the Google voice assistants, or even any of the natural language systems out there, one thing you find very, very quickly is I need to learn their nouns and their verbs. And most of the systems, even when you start building them by typing them in, they only can handle one verb and maybe two nouns. Well, this system, because of the way it's working, it's allowing you to have a much more natural interface, something that doesn't feel quite so stilted. And I think this is one of the big reasons why academics and some other people are kind of freaking out, because now for the first time, or maybe one of the first times, we can start having much more natural responses that could potentially be mistaken for a human's work. It's going to be really interesting. I think, like any advanced technology, both good and bad can be done with it. I, for one, want to think about the good things, because I really want, when I'm old and frail and confined maybe to a wheelchair or a walker, I don't want to have to walk all the way across the room to be able to just turn on the lights. I want to be able to have a conversation with my home to tell it what I would like to do. And I would like to use a natural language interface, which I hope this was a stepping stone for.
I agree. I think this is going to be a very interesting technology. I know a lot of organizations out there are very excited about the potential. Now we're talking about a little bit, like Curtis had talked about, potential disruptors here and what some of the markets it can disrupt. Now, I think we should go through some of the other ones, because there's some pretty interesting. Obviously, the most prominent one that I see quite often is the fact that Google seems to have the throne of being the most used search out there today. Now, they obviously provide based off their own ranking algorithms and so on. But the interesting thing about this model and this system is that it can produce data to in one single place without you having to go and search around the world. Do you guys think that this is something that will replace the common search that we have today?
God, I don't know that I don't know that it's going to replace it. I think what it's going to do is give us a new way into it. In the same way that I'm going to show my age, I remember when before there was Google, there was the reference desk at the New York Public Library. And every writer that I knew had the number for that desk in their daytimer, or in their Rolodex. And you would call and you would talk to a human being, and they would sometimes go away for a few minutes. Sometimes they would call you back and give you an answer. I suspect that what we're going to see is a lot more human questioning and voice response to simple queries. A lot of us base our expectations for this kind of interface on what we saw on a handful of television shows and movies, Star Trek being one of the most frequently cited. If you recall, what we have there is that people talk to the computers for commands and fairly straightforward answers to analysis. When they wanted to get deep, they were holding on to a pad or looking at a screen. We have different ways of looking at data when the data is of varying complexities, varying lengths, and varying densities. And I think that's going to remain. But I have to say, I do love the idea that at some point I will get to a place where my main interface with my computer and the internet is voice, rather than trying to see just how accurate I can be with my thumbs.
Well, I'm going to add to that, only because I actually took real, honest to God, graduate level classes on search methodologies, because those reference librarians were using access to some databases which were ungodly expensive. These database companies charge an amazing amount of money for what is actually sometimes publicly published. Being able to search things was a skill that you had to learn, and librarians were very good at. I actually took classes on how to do that. It actually got down to the point where I was using natural expressions, those weird little characters that you'd use and see and so forth. I was starting to use those so that I could string together multiple verbs and multiple nouns so I can get more accurate results. Well, Google and so forth started making that very redundant. And now what this is doing is it's going to make it a lot easier to get very sophisticated answers without having to know a specialized language. I think that's going to be the key, not needing that specialized language to do queries. And I for one, am very much looking forward to that.
Agreed. I think this is going to be really interesting to see how it will disrupt some things. I think some organizations will, especially, they use chat bots today to help with customer service, with sales, with marketing. I really feel like this more natural sense that we'll be able to not only bring in data from the company and from other sources in a much more natural way will definitely help with that experience. The question is, how fast can they commercialize it? Now, I think there's one other one before we move on, because we do want to get to our guest, is the fact that the cybersecurity industry, they're a little worried about this. And I think it's just because of the fact that this particular technology has the ability to, mimic things, potentially mimicking, user content or users themselves. They can generate content that might even look legitimate, like, for instance, emails from a particular service or application. In this case, they are considering it almost harmful content. Do you guys feel like this is adding to the problem that's already out there that we call phishing and cybersecurity and ransomware and that kind of thing?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to a computer being able to tell me which squares have bicycles in them.
Do it for you, huh? Those captchas.
I like this, but I do think that this has the possibility of impacting, especially something called a BEC, or business email compromise. That's where someone has compromised an email account so that they are sending out spear phishing messages, not from a spoofed email account, but actually from a legitimate email account. When you can also spoof the content that particular user might send, or using some of the voice spoofing technology that is now coming online, do a deep fake of their voice and include an attached voice recording that asks the recipient to do something. We're starting to get into a whole new level of potential fraud. So I think this is going to put the onus on fraud detection training and fraud detection technology. They have their job cut out for them for the next couple of years at least.
Agreed. Well, I think we've probably talked about that. Brian, you have anything else to add to that?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So I definitely think there's going to be more to come. Obviously, we've seen a lot of interest from different players in the industry, and we might just see some potential funding in that area to help play out some of the technology. But it will be really interesting to see how this all plays out in the coming months. It's looking that 2023 might be the year of AI. We'll have to see. Well, folks, I'd say that is done for the bites. But before we get to our guests, we do have to thank another great sponsor of This Week in Enterprise Tech, and that is ZipRecruiter. Now, this is the busiest time of year for really any business, and you're building your goals for 2023. And all this means is finding the right people to help you accomplish them. Now, finding qualified candidates or adjusting to candidates' work preferences are familiar examples of hiring challenges that all of our employers face out there. Now, luckily, there's one place you can go to help you achieve your hiring goals, and that is ZipRecruiter. And right now, you can try it for free. Go to ZipRecruiter.com/TWiT. Go right now. Let's get personal for just a moment here. Now, for me, I have several personal and professional goals for 2023. Now, professionally, I want to scale some of our services to really allow people to automate things faster. And finding people who have the skills to help me do that can be easy with ZipRecruiter. Now, ZipRecruiter uses its powerful matching technology to help you find the right candidates for your job. Now, see a candidate who would be a perfect fit? Well, ZipRecruiter makes it easy to send them a personal invite so they more likely want to apply. Now, ZipRecruiter offers attention-grabbing labels that speak to job flexibility, like remote, training provided, and much more. Now, ZipRecruiter also has a user-friendly dashboard that lets you filter, review, and rate your candidates all from a single place. Let ZipRecruiter help you find the best people for all of your roles. 4 out of 5 employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day. See for yourself. Go to this exclusive web address to try ZipRecruiter for free at ZipRecruiter.com/TWiT. That's ZipRecruiter.com/TWiT. ZipRecruiter, the smartest way to hire. And we thank ZipRecruiter for their support of This Week in Enterprise Tech. Well, folks, it's my favorite part of the show. We actually get to bring in a guest to drop some knowledge on the TWiT riot. And today we have Becky Trevino. She's Executive Vice President from Snow Software. Welcome to the show, Becky.
Hey, excited to be on. Great to meet you all.
Well, thanks so much for being here. We have a large audience, and they're all at different points in their career, and a lot of them like to hear about people's origin stories. Can you take us through a journey through tech and what brought you to Snow Software?
I'm an engineer like a lot of you. I graduated from the University of Michigan with a dual degree in business and engineering, started off my career in engineering at Dell. And I think I've just progressed with the servers. I started at Dell when primarily we were working on premises and shadow IT was the big thing. Then I moved on to Rackspace when I call it the Pepsi to Amazon's Coke, because we had launched OpenStack and for founding that. And I was just at the onset of the cloud with that really strong adoption when we were really moving in from the cloud being just something that was test and dev into now being something that was production. So I went through that era with Rackspace. And then I joined Snow at what I call the end user era, where we're now seeing this shift in buying patterns from, B2B technology, where it moved from being the CIO made all the technology decisions, then it was lines of businesses, and now we're seeing end users, whether that's DevOps or product-led growth, that are really deciding the use of technology in their organizations. And that's what we help do at Snow, is really manage the technology that organizations are using and help get IT the visibility they need into what software and cloud services are running in their environment.
Okay, so I want to dig into that because I think there are some organizations out there that sound like they're doing something similar, but my guess is they're not. Obviously, a lot of organizations, they are trying to juggle things like automation, data intelligence, trying to handle all these different multi-cloud environments. It's pretty challenging if you ask me, especially for smaller IT organizations and the CIOs of the world. What is Snow Software really doing in this space? What kind of technology are they bringing to the table to help with all this?
We started off really helping customers manage software asset management. And that was a big question that organizations had in terms of enabling you to know how many licenses of Oracle, SAP, Microsoft you really needed in your environment. And that's where we really built our database. We tell the world that we have the world's largest database of software publishers in the world. Mm-hmm. And so we built that knowledge, really helping organizations right-size their technology. And back when organizations received audit letters, and some still do, we helped them, really establish their license position. That was infancy of what we did. But in the process, what we got through that was a really strong identity around, we know what organizations run in their environment. So we have a good idea of on-premises technology. Then we started to grow and understand, well, SaaS is becoming this really big thing. So we extended that definition to building our database and understanding and recognizing and identifying all of the SaaS technologies an organization runs. Then as the cloud began to take on, we made an acquisition of Embotix, which was a leader in hybrid cloud management, and then got to understand more of the hybrid cloud environment, the cloud pieces. And most recently, have built some partnerships into FinOps to really help an organization understand, well, how much are you spending on Azure, AWS, et cetera, when it's just a public cloud environment and not extended into your hybrid cloud environment. And so that's how we've kind of just grown our business, from starting off with SAM into growing it into SaaS, and then now having a broader view into hybrid cloud and FinOps.
So let's talk technology for a second. The interesting thing is, I did hear this, all of this is built, especially the Atlas platform, the Snow Atlas platform that you have, is actually built on Azure. Now, you were just ingesting all of this data from these organizations, maybe building some data lakes here and there and building some analytics around them, or is there some policy engines around it? How is this all kind of, without giving too much of the right. Secret sauce away? How's it built?
So a lot of it, we end up ingesting a lot of that data, and it's really up to the customer how they choose to do it. So for example, a lot of our customers use Microsoft SCCM to bring in the data themselves into it. Oftentimes what most customers do, because they want that granular data, and particularly if you're working with IT, you end up using the Snow agent. So we'll deploy an agent into an environment where you really need to understand how much Oracle am I running in my particular data center. Other times we use technology like a browser extension that enables you to understand that true usage of SaaS. Because what a lot of organizations will do for you is say, well, I can look just at your financial ledgers to understand how much SaaS you're using. But when you look at it from a shadow SaaS perspective, which a lot of IT people are really interested in, you want to really understand usage. So that browser extension enables us to really understand who actually last accessed a particular SaaS site on technology. And then oftentimes with FinOps, we're really just ingesting in data in from AWS, Azure, and how much your actually the billing statements are in there. So we get permissions therein, and we bring that into our data, and then we end up being able to ingest that and make insights and recommendations from there.
Interesting. So I want to just kind of pivot just for a second. I know that there was a recent report brought out by Snow, the 2023 IT Priorities Report. And I know you guys surveyed a bunch of IT leaders across the industry. There's some interesting things in here. Can you maybe take us through maybe an overview of some of the background and the findings that you saw in that report?
Right. So a big part of Snow, what we end up enabling customers to do is just maximize their technology. We want customers to be able to spend more in the areas that actually work for them. So part of our IT priorities report is really that lens is from an IT organization, where do you want to spend more? And ideally what we found from customers that in an ideal world in 2023, where we believe that our purses are going to be a little bit tighter because, hey, we don't have as much budget to spend. We see that CIOs are already understanding that they're spending too much. Post-pandemic, a lot of us thought that organizations would just right-size technology. Instead, they invested a lot more in technology. I think it was Satya Nadella that said that he saw 2 years of digital transformation in 2 months. And as a result of that, what the IT Priorities Report shows, a lot of tech stacks are bloated right now. In general, most IT organizations are spending too much on their technology. And so there's a vast majority of CIOs today that are looking at, well, how do I reduce how much I'm spending? Not in critical areas, but in understanding that I probably bought too much. I'm probably not getting that return on investment. And so the priorities report really tells people, well, where exactly do you want to do that spend? And a lot of it is really around application rationalization, which is, hey, I want to be able to really go back to my organization and understand, do you really need Smartsheet and Trello at the same time? Or can we just consolidate on one and generate some savings? The other part of it that we uncovered is that there's this balance for IT between, I got to right size spend in my organization. I have to grow digital transformation, but I also have to keep security top of mind. And what's going on in technology for a lot of CIOs is, I think we've known for a long time that the technology spend decision-making has moved to lines of business. And as that's happened, and particularly with the growth of DevOps and product-led growth, is that most CIOs and most IT leaders no longer know what technology is running in their environment. And on average, organizations have 190 SaaS applications running in their environment. And with that, most of that's being procured without the knowledge of IT. So what's coming out of the IT Priorities Report is that shadow SaaS, where IT just does not know that this is being procured or used, particularly that usage component where you can't really rely on that financial statement, is becoming a bigger deal for CIOs and IT leaders.
It's amazing how many, I've been in organizations, but sitting with organizations where people were using applications and their IT department didn't even know they were using it. It's pretty interesting to see some of these organizations use these things. It's compliance problems too. I do want to bring my co-host
but also
back
buying patterns as well. Like if you think about it, you're a technologist. What does DevOps want to do? No one wants to take the sales call anymore. And then when you take the sales call, you have to engage procurement. And the way that people want to buy now is, I'm going to try it out. Okay, I tried it out. It was successful. Then I'm going to have my buddy over there try it out. Then I'm going to have that engineer try it. And pretty soon 10 people are using it. And then, okay, now I'm going to move from the community edition to the paid edition. It's really hard for IT to know that without some type of usage mechanism of what the people in the organization are using. So it is a big compliance and issue and just a security issue at large beyond just the cost issue that we're unaware of.
Right. Well, I do want to bring my co-host back in because they're chomping at the bit. You want to ask some questions. I'll throw to you first, Brian.
Well, you actually answered part of the question in that shadow SaaS or shadow IT in general is a huge problem. I saw it back when PCs started sneaking in the door and SuperCalc came in, and all of a sudden mainframes weren't, were IT, it was crazy. But what other things can you folks help with? Because cleaning up behind orphan or zombie projects is a big deal. How much further can we go? Is it just finding orphaned microservices and virtual machines, or can we actually start looking at maybe underutilized things or what have you? What other tools do we have in cleaning up shadow SaaS?
I think a big portion is that what we call at Snow, the first part is really establishing that level of visibility. You want to know what's going on in your environment. Then the next two parts of our software, really what's insightful for customers, is first, we give you that insight in terms of, what do I do with that? Like, this is being underutilized. that's being used by this department. So we really help our users hone in on where to spend their time. So that's the insight. And then we give them recommendations on, particularly around application rationalization of, you have too much of that. Let's get rid of it, because that's a risk area for you. And then, hey, this particular user didn't use that. Maybe they should get rid of it. So we try to drive automation and recommendations into the process to enable people to do more than just, hey, we've recognized a bunch of mess for you. We try to identify the areas in which they can actually hone in to just drive value, whether that's from a compliance perspective or that's from just a cost perspective where they just like to streamline and just get less bloated.
Yeah, I'm also really curious. Do you folks actually help on the social side? Trying to tell someone that you're over utilizing something or you're bloated. That's a tough thing to buy, especially if you're really invested in it. Do your people actually help with that, to help, change the personality of the IT organization?
I think a big part for us in the organization is really empowering IT. So I think at the end of the day, IT really needs to work with the lines of business in terms of, hey, you don't want to be the police anymore, right? You don't want to actually tell people, hey, get that away. But what we try to do is give a CRO the insights that say, here is how much you're spending on technology. Your technology spend is up X percentage year over year. Is that really where you want to spend your dollars? And so and then here would be some of our recommendations as to where we would streamline that budget. So I think that's the social perspective. At the end of the day, particularly when it's workloads and applications that sit outside of IT, that's really a sensitive topic, because you can't really go to other parts of the business and tell them, hey, I'm going to reduce your budget without that action. So we try to enable just the data, so that our CIOs can have really good conversation with their peers and really just elevate the IT function to be able to say, look, at the end of the day, IT is responsible if something goes wrong with technology, regardless of where it was procured. So we give them the data to have those good conversations with their peers. And sometimes the decision is to keep a source of technology. Like at Snow, for example, we used our own technology to identify that we should streamline on Teams. But at the end of the day, while the data suggested that, our organization as a whole said, nope, we actually want to use both Teams and Zoom. But the data within the product enabled us to have the decision and have the conversation about whether or not that was the best use of our resources and dollars.
Curtis?
Thank you so much. Well, one of the things that I'm curious about, your company uses a word that you see an awful lot in the industry these days, and that's visibility. And one of the questions I have is, why, A, is that such a hard nut to crack? And B, are there so many different approaches to visibility? It seems like the sort of thing where there would be one best way into it, but instead we seem to have 1,000 different ways of approaching telling a company what they actually have.
I think most companies don't know what technology they're running. And frankly, it's probably the biggest challenge that CIOs have, is that you really don't know, and you live with a certain level of ambiguity, and you just have to, because at the end of the day, there's this never ending battle between governance and agility, right? You want to be able to lock things down, but then the other people want to, I was actually one of those engineers that used to work at Dell and was part of the shadow IT problem, because I would work around Dell IT because I wanted to work faster than what the Dell IT roadmap or policies would let me do. And so I think with that, it's just this constant battle within organizations, and we've just enabled ourselves to live with it. And there is no perfect way to derive visibility and to know what assets exist in your organization. And there's a plethora of it. I think, I don't know we've solved that problem, just because I don't know that it's been the big priority for organizations. We know that IT asset management, for instance, which we're a leader in, sits at the foundation of the NIST framework. But, sometimes we decide, hey, there's other avenues or different problems to prioritize. So I think that has been the challenge, is that while we know it's important, we know that visibility is there, we haven't always prioritized it as it made to the top of the list of things that we need to action on. And that's why that challenge is so robust and remains in the industry, and why you have 20 plus different ways of achieving visibility.
Well, since I brought up the many different ways and you answered it, I'm going to take the next step and talk about the fact that it's a market where there is a huge player, a company that sounds a lot like the hobby of going into caves. Do you find that your customers look to you to solve different problems than they would get from that massive market player, or are they looking to solve problems in a specific way? What sort of special things do you bring to the market?
I think most customers come to Snow to solve an IT asset management problem, which is, look, I need to know what I'm running in my technology so that I can help my IT organization to maximize the value of what we're spending. In the end, once you have that data, there's endless possibilities of what you can do with it. We've had customers that have built sustainability dashboards using that data that can help quantify that moving from shutting down a data center has reduced their carbon footprint by XYZ. We've had customers that have used our data to identify how much all the Oracle footprint in their environment to make their shift to from on-premises to cloud faster. We've had customers that have used our data to actually sit there and improve how they do IT service management, because they've now had their CMDB was a mess and they used our data to actually clean up ServiceNow. And so the use cases of what you can do when you have a robust set of data, that really almost this intelligence layer of all of the data running your technology, are really endless. Our specific use cases of what we help customers do is to reduce their technology spend, manage risk, whether that's from an audit or that's through M&A, that you've acquired a company and you don't know what they're running. And we definitely help companies do that. We help customers to have higher ROI from their investments in ServiceNow and BMC through improved CMDB data quality. Those are some that we've productized, but our customers have used this for endless use cases that they've either used our services team or they've just extracted that data themselves and have been partnering with their IT teams or other of our channel partners to get that end result for them.
Well, we're getting down towards the end of time, but I wanted to ask a question. Is there any sort of commonality or a trend in the department or the job title that tends to approach you first from an organization? It sounds like once you are in an organization, your data and your services are going to be used by a lot of different groups, but is there a single way that you tend to get into a group?
I think one is whether that's a software asset management professional, a FinOps professional, IT director who's looking to understand what exactly am I running from a SaaS, like how much SaaS am I running? I need to bring down my SaaS costs, or, hey, I'm spending too much. So whether that's IT asset management, an IT manager, or FinOps professional, one of those three titles is usually coming to Snow for some level of support managing their technology footprint.
Very good. Well, since we've now identified who asked, how does someone do it? If one of our listeners or viewers wanted to get started with Snow, what's the first step that they should take?
I think a good one is to really go to our website, identify information. There you can just download some content within it. Some of our products either offer a demo or a free trial. What a lot of customers are using us right now is a lot of cloud providers have raised their prices. So right now, for instance, a lot of folks are coming to Snow to talk through a 7-day assessment that we help customers understand how much are you spending on your Azure or your AWS. And let's sit here and talk about how we can right size that for you.
Fantastic. Well, it's amazing how time flies when you're having fun. Becky, thank you so much for being on the show. Great conversation. Since we're running low on time, I did want to give you the chance to maybe just tell the folks at home where they could maybe learn about some of the events or things that are coming out from Snow Software coming soon? Maybe some events that you're going to be attending to?
I think a big one for us is really coming in. Follow us on LinkedIn, on social media, or you can go to our website and link into where we'll be. I think that's a great way to just find out where Snow is. And if any point someone on your shows is interested in our products, wants to learn on something, just connect with me on LinkedIn, and I'm happy to talk through what a good next step would be.
Fantastic. Thanks so much for being here.
No, you're welcome. Good to meet you all.
You as well. Well, folks, you've done it again. You sat through another hour of the best dang enterprise and IT podcast in the universe. So definitely tune your podcatcher to TWiT. We want to make sure I thank everyone who makes this show possible, especially to my co-host, our very own Mr. Brian Chee. Cheebert, what's going on for you in the coming weeks? Where can people find you?
I'm building cabinets with Kurt. I'm actually doing a lot of stuff. I discovered that, sadly, some of my really cool cell modems are 3G, and that's gone. So I guess I'm going to dump those and see about what I can get. I really wish I had paid attention on and did an inventory, because it was almost 6 years ago when I got the first notice from my AT&T rep offering trade-ins on my 3G modems so that I could make the transition to LTE Cat M or M1. I'm going to poke fun at the city and county of Honolulu, only because they got the same kind of notice, and now all their parking meters with 3G modems in them don't work anymore. So free parking. If you haven't traded out your 3G modems, I'm not sure there are trade-ins left, but you should check with your rep. Anyway, I rant about things like that on Twitter, and my Twitter address is ADVNETLAB, Advanced Net Lab. I would love to hear from you. We throw out all kinds of interesting things. If you were following me, you saw pictures that I took on Remy's Wild Ride. That's where Remy came from. And looking forward to hearing from you, especially show ideas. Some of you have thrown out some amazing show ideas. I desperately tried to shuffle around and play show Tetris to try and keep the threads going and make sure we cover different things. We try very hard to also get startups so that we can have them represent themselves and get known by the general public. You're also welcome to use email. My email address is Cheebert, spelled CHEEBERT @twit.tv. You can also throw email at TWiT@twit.tv, and that'll hit all the hosts. We'd love to hear from you. Everybody stay safe and have a great time.
Thank you, Cheebert. Yeah, I definitely think some of the health device organizations out there should deal something with their 3G modems, because I have a couple at home here that still have 3G and they just stop working. I think that's a good thing for health devices. Anyways, thanks so much for being here, Cheebert. Well, we also have to thank our very own Mr. Curtis Franklin. Curtis, what about you? What's coming up for you in the coming weeks? Where can people find you?
Well, as for me, as I mentioned earlier, I'm going to be writing about a number of different things. I've got pieces coming up for our Omnia subscribers, as well as some pieces coming up on dark reading in the next week or two. Continue to do some things on LinkedIn, both some writing and some LinkedIn Live. If you want to keep up with me, you can find me, of course, on Twitter at KG4GWA. If you're someone who is a Twitter refugee, you can find me on Mastodon. I'm KG4GWA at mastodon.sdf.org. You're also welcome to follow me on LinkedIn or Facebook. I'm just all over the place, still trying to figure out all I can about the world of cybersecurity and share what I learn with other people.
Fantastic. Thanks so much for being here, Curtis. Well, we also have to thank you as well. You're the person who drops in each and every week to watch and to listen to our show to get your enterprise and IT goodness. We want to make it easy for you to watch, listen, and catch up on your enterprise and IT news. So go to our show page right now, twit.tv/TWiT. There you'll find all the amazing back episodes, the show notes, the co-host information, the guest information, of course, the links that we do during the show as well. But more importantly, next to those videos right there, we'll get your helpful subscribe and download links. Support the show by get your audio version, your video version of your choice. Listen on any one of your devices or your podcatchers applications, because we're on all of them. So definitely subscribe and support the show. Now, you may have also heard we also have Club TWiT. That's right. It's a members only ad-free podcast service. It has a bonus TWiT Plus feed that you can't get anywhere else. And it's only $7 a month. That's right. It's a great way to listen to Club TWiT, but also one of the really cool things is exclusive access to the members only Discord server. You can chat with hosts like us, producers. You can have separate discussion channels, lots of great channels in there. Plus, they also have special events. So definitely check that out. Join Club TWiT, be part of the movement. Go to twit.tv/Club TWiT. Now, Club TWiT also offers corporate group clans. It's a great way to give your entire team access to our ad-free tech podcast. The plans start with 5 members at a discounted rate of $6 each per month, and you can add as many seats as you like. And this is a great way for your IT departments, your developers, your sales teams, your tech teams to stay up to date with access to all of our podcasts. And just like regular memberships, they can join the TWiT Discord server and get that TWiT Plus bonus feed as well. So go to twit.tv/Club TWiT. Now, also remember, it's that time of the year for the TWiT audience survey. Now, this is really an annual survey that really helps us understand our audience so we can make your listening experience even better. Now, it only takes just a few minutes. So go to twit.tv/survey23. That's twit.tv/survey23. Don't wait. The last day to take the survey is January 31st. And it only takes a couple minutes. So go check it out right now. Thank you very much. Now, after you subscribe, impress your family members, your coworkers, your friends with the gift of TWiT. We talk about a lot of fun tech topics on the show, and I guarantee that they will find it fun and interesting as well. So definitely have them subscribe. Now, if you've already subscribed, you can also watch this show live. That's right. Come see how the pizza's made, all the behind the scenes at 1:30 p.m. Pacific time on Fridays. And we can do that show live at live.twit.tv. That's the website. Go to there right now. You'll see all the different streams you can choose from. We do the show live. And in fact, we have lots of fun. Now, if you're going to watch the show live, you should also check out our live chat room as well. We have an IRC channel. It's been there for a while, and there's lots of amazing characters in there. Reberg Mike, Loquacious, we have Curtis Franklin's in there, Doug's in there, Adam24, Co-ops. Everyone's in there, so definitely check it out. We also have some new people in there as well each and every week. So irc.twit.tv. Now, definitely hit me up. I'm always on Twitter at twitter.com/LeoMam. There I post all my enterprise tidbits. I'm on Mastodon as well. And of course, hit me up on LinkedIn. I love to have conversations, especially around technology and so on LinkedIn. So definitely hit me up there. And if you want to know what I do during my normal work week, check out developers.microsoft.com/office. There we post all the amazing ways that you can customize your office experience to make it more productive for you. So definitely check that out. I want to thank everyone who makes this show possible, especially to Leo and to Lisa. They support this Week in Enterprise Tech each and every week, and we really couldn't do this show without them. So thank you, Leo and Lisa, for all your support over the years. Of course, I want to thank all the engineers and staff at TWiT. We couldn't do the show without them. Of course, thank you to Mr. Brian Chee one more time. He's not only our co-host, but he's also our tireless producer. That's right. He does all the bookings and the plannings that we do during the show, that he does for the show, and we couldn't do with this show without him. So thank you, Cheebert, for all your support. Now, before we sign out, I want to thank our editor for today because they make us look good after the fact, of course. And of course, thank you to our TD for today, Mr. Anthony. Thank you so much for all your support, Anthony, and to making this seamless for us. We appreciate all your support. Until next time, I'm Louis Maresca, just reminding you, if you want to know what's going on in the enterprise, just keep TWiT.
Hey, I'm Rod Pyle, Editor-in-Chief of Ad Astra Magazine, and each week I join with my co-host to bring you This Week in Space, the latest and greatest news from the final frontier. We talk to NASA chiefs, space scientists, engineers, educators, and artists, and sometimes we just shoot the breeze over what's hot and what's not in space, books, and TV. And we do it all for you, our fellow true believers. So whether you're an armchair adventurer or waiting for your turn to grab a slot in Elon's Mars rocket, join us on This Week in Space and be part of the greatest adventure of all time.